Hello guys, welcome to my channel. In this video I'll be taking you guys through a simple tutorial on how to create a page like this in Flutter. Basically it just teaches you how to use the basic components in Flutter, which are rows and columns, containers, and stacks. You'll be able to interact with the app. Clicking on the colors will change the colors of the shoes and likes, and you can also favorite and unfavorite the app. So with that being said, let's jump right into the video. Launch your Android Studio and create a new Flutter project, Flutter application. You can name this application products. Create it offline, test and finish. Alright, now that we have a new project created in Android Studio, we can go ahead and remove the default templates that came with the project. So this is the default project when you start a new Flutter project. It's basically interactive, but we have to clear everything now and start the project from a clean slate. So basically, um, I would also remove this function and variable here, and also to throw an error, so I can remove everything inside the scaffold to the body. And use a placeholder. We'll be changing that soon. We can also remove the app bar because we need to build a custom app bar in our case. Also, we can remove the title in the constructor. Then we can add this. So we have removed all the default components in the app. Let me just run this app so we can see what we have now. That's really. So I also want to remove the debug checker here as well. So we have a clean app state. So before I start, I would like to import the assets that I'll be using for the project. It will be available in a link in the description below for you to use. So to add, I'll be adding an image asset first. To add an image, you go ahead and create an image folder or directory. Name it images. So you can copy your images into that. In my case here, I have images that I want to use. So I just copy everything and drag it into the image directory. Also, I'll be using a custom font. So I also add some font files. So to use that as well, you need to create a directory called fonts, and copy your font file into that directory. Okay, the last thing I'll be adding right now is I have the color codes that I want to use. So I just copy the dat file and add it into my libs directory. So that is set. Then after adding the image to your project, you need to link the image in the postspec.yml file. So you open the postspec file now and scroll down. You see a sample to add an image here. So we're doing something like this. So first thing, you need to have your assets, then the link, the directory, the path to the image. So I'll go ahead and add everything now and continue the video. We are done adding the images to the project now. Next thing is to add the fonts to the postspec.yml file. So same thing, you scroll down, you see a sample of how to add fonts to the project. So right here, we have fonts, and we have the font family that we are using. In our case, it's Montserrat. Then you can go ahead and add the font files. Right, so now that we are done adding our assets, we can go ahead to start the project. So we go to lib file and open the main project, which is our roots to the project. So what we are looking to create is a design made by Giomena Avena. I'm not sure if I pronounced that name right. Giovanni Almeida. You can find the design here on Dribbble. I'll add the link to the description below. You can download the sketch file and open in a sketch app if you have one. But with that being said, let's just jump right in. So before I build this project, I like to visualize how I will lay out my widget here. So I have a sample here. Let me try to zoom in. So I look at where I need to use rows and columns, or I need to place an item above each other, where I will use a stack or column. With that being done, then I can just go ahead and create my project. So first thing we will do, based on the breakdown of the page, is to create a column, because it's meant to stack the item from top to bottom. So we can add a placeholder to see what we have. We'll be replacing the placeholder shortly with the right components. Oh, unexpected child font found under fonts. Okay, I think there's an issue with the fonts. Where we added our fonts, it should be fonts. as it is here. So let's run the project again. Okay, we have our view showing inside the status bar of the app. To fix that, we need to wrap our base body inside a component called safe area. So that would undo the spacing between the top of the device to where the content is meant to start from. Okay, we can go ahead and remove this background blue. I was not meant to do that. Now that we see we have the item laid out in column from top to bottom, let's switch this to see what a row will look like. So we see that the row is laid out horizontally. We can now change this back to what we want. So from the design, what we are doing will be to create the first item here, which will be the header. So we can go ahead and create a function that will return a widget. You can call it an header. Returns a widget. So we can go ahead to build our header now. So what we'll be using will be the row widget. As we can add a placeholder to see the layout. So we need to space the content of the row evenly. So we want them to spread from edge to edge rather than being clumped together to one side like this. So to do that, you add main axis. Space evenly. Let's say the one that works fine. I think I want space between. Yes, looks more like it. So now that we have that, we can go ahead to replace the placeholder with the correct item, which would be an image. So the image asset value would be the name of the image we are supposed to use in this case, which would be the back button. Now this part must be the same part that was added into the prospect.yml file. Now we can see the image. We can also go ahead to add the other shopping bag image. Okay, So the shopping bag image looks bigger than what we want, so we can modify it by modifying the height and width property of the image. You can say we want an height of 24 and a width of 24. Let's see what happens. Okay, um, bit smaller. Okay, that looks bigger. So we can modify this to give it a bigger height. Okay, that looks more like it. So to add spacing around our header, just go ahead to add a padding to the container. Like so. We might want to reduce the distance between the top part, so we can just use symmetric. Symmetric padding allows you to add padding to the vertical aspect of the container or the horizontal aspect. So we use for horizontal, we use 16, and for vertical, we use 10. Okay. Now the center of the app bar is meant to be a column with two text. We can add that right away by adding a column. The first text says men's original and the second Smith shoes. Okay, now we're almost done with our header or app bar. So we need to add some some form of styling to the text to make it look more like it. So we're modifying the font weight and the color of the text, maybe the size as well. So let's use modify the font weight first. Font weight, let's use 100. So we have copy the style and do the same thing for the one underneath, like 400. Okay, and the font size should be like 24. And the font size here should be like, let's use 16. Okay. It needs to be bolder. Okay, seems we are done with the app bar now. But to use the fonts we added, we just come to the top of the project in the material app. Under theme data, you can use font family and use the name of the font we added to our pop spec. To be sure I'm not making a mistake in the name, I'll just go ahead to copy it from here. So the font has changed now. Now we can go ahead to work on the hero section of the page. So we can replace this placeholder with hero and create a function. Now looking at the hero, we can see that the favorite button is right above the image. So in that case, we'll be using a stack. So the stack contain our image. Then you can just choose one of the image for now. There we have it. Then you can add a button. Our button, which is the favorite button, is meant to be positioned towards the right of the image. So to do that, you use a widget called positioned, which the widget allows you to place a widget or any view in any position in a stack. This is a floating action button. Press function and the child. The child will be an image which should be alt icon disabled. Okay, I think I need to increase the font so you guys can see what I'm doing more clearly. Sorry about that, guys. So now that we have the image and the button, so we can change the color of the image to white. Then we can change the size of this to 624. That looks a bit smaller. Okay, that looks more like it. Now you'll be wondering that the floating action button is still positioned to the left, the top left. To move it to the bottom right, you need to add a value called bottom 0 and right 0. So now we have the image very close to the edge at the right. To move it away from the right, you increase the value of the right parameter. So from there you can modify. I think we'll be using something like 20, and we can move it away from the bottom by say 10 points. Okay, that looks more like it. So that way we can move ahead to the section. So this section contains the description of the product, then the color and the size. So we can add more to our column. We'll call it section. to go ahead and create a function that returns a widget. That would be the section. So the first thing you notice in this section is that it is also stacked from top to bottom. But the section here, the property section here, will be a row. So the first thing we need to do is to add a colon and add our description text and be able to type all this. So I'll just add some gibberish. You can just copy that from its side. You can copy as much as you want, but I'll take that little one for myself. I think I can break this down to view, or maybe I copied too much of the text. But that's fine. Now that we have the text, we can go ahead to add a section. To make it clearer, I'll create a new function that will return a widget, call it property. The property should return first a container. Now that we have the property widget, we can create a row which will house the color and the size property. So that should be inside a children parameter. Okay, we have the description text. We do not have, we have the property, but it's very close to it. So we can space a widget by using a size box, adding an height of say 20. I'll give us the spacing that we want. Then we can pad our container symmetrically. We'll pad the vertical side, that's the top and bottom. You can use padding of 10, and your horizontal padding, which is the right and the left side, you can use 20, which should be the exact one we use on the upper. And before we go ahead to style our property, the color and size, we can go ahead to style the description. So first thing I'd like to do is to adjust the justification. So I think we can do that by adding the alignment. We look for a property called I think it's not in the text style. Alright, so it's in the text property itself called text align. Text align. Justify is what I want. Or maybe not. You can use left instead. Then for the text style, you need to look for a property called height. You can do 1.5 for the text height. That gives a bit of breathing space to the text. I think that looks more like it. The text is a bit longer. Let me reduce it so we can have something similar to what we have here. The text here seems to be justified, so we can do the same thing to have the same justified text. And the font size seems to be smaller. Say the font size to be 14. And the color of the text we can use the color is from the color file added to the project, so we can use it from here. Have color dot here to import it. Body color. Okay, it looks more like it. So we can go ahead now to create the color section of the property. So for the color section here, we need to space the content between. So we have made this alignment and this space between, which would push each content apart from edge to edge. Now we can go ahead to add a colon for the top text, then a placeholder for our colors. Then also we have the same thing here, so place a text for size, and then a place for the actual size value. So you need to add a comma between the children of a column. Okay, that looks more like it. And the next thing to do is to start. Let's start with the color. You can start the color title. This color is from the color file I created here. Font weight of say 400. This one's more. For some reason, it's not changing. Let's increase the font size as well to 16. To use font weight not bold. And we copy the same style for the size as well. We need to make sure that the color is to the left and the size too. So that will be cross-axis alignment. So trying to move an item in a column or a row to the edge might be tricky, but with time you get used to know which one to use between main axis or cross-axis alignments with time. So now that we have the color styled, and go ahead to add our colors, color button maybe. So our colors should be inside the row. You can use a container. The container, no child yet, but we can use an height of 24 and width of 24. Then a color, using a placeholder color for now of orange. A bit smaller, we can make it a bit larger. Okay, I think I'll go with that. Now, the color buttons are meant to be circular. So to make it circular, we need to add a decoration and a decoration image. Sorry, not decoration image, box decoration. Then we can add a border radius of circular border radius of the half of the item width, in this case which will be 17. If we run this project now, it will crash because you can't have a decoration property and also have a color property on the container. The color property has to go into the box decoration. So doing that will fix the issue. There are a couple of ways to make the container circular, but I'll go with the box decoration approach. So we have the first color, which we can now replicate to create the other colors. But I won't be doing that yet. I need to add some spaces to this. No, I don't want to add the spacing here. Okay, it's fine there. It's fine there. We will add the same spacing for the size property as well. Now that we have the images of the buttons, we just go ahead to replicate this. In this case, our button color should match the shoe colors we have. Now you can see that the buttons are joined together. We can do a couple of modifications, but what I would do in my case here is to add a margin to the buttons. You know what? I'll go ahead to create these buttons programmatically, so I can take one of these and generate lists of buttons I want. In my case, I want 4 buttons, and it should return the container. So that generated. So what I'm saying here is I want to generate 4 containers. So now we have to modify the color of the container based on the index. So to do that, we can easily create an array of colors that we can use. So I'll go to the top of the state and create a list of colors. So we can check the color available here: blue, green, yellow, and pink. So we have colors that blue, colors that green, colors that yellow, and colors that pink or pink accents. See the ones that work. So we can then use this color inside our list. So we can pick the color based on the index, and that's fine. Now we need to space these guys, so we can add a margin. So I would rather add a margin to the right of my container. So we have margin, edge insert only, and I want it to the right. Okay, now we have the colors item. We can also go ahead to style the size widget before we go ahead to create the interactive component here. So first thing should be the font weight. Font weight bold. But if you notice, I don't know if it is visible through here, there's a bit of background in behind the size property. So we go ahead to add that now to our project as well. Let me increase this if that will help. So you can go ahead to copy, or rather you can just use shortcut to wrap it inside a container. And I believe the color should be color of the body property here. No, not. I modify the color to give us an opacity of say 30% of that color. Okay, and we can go ahead to pad this container here along all the sides with 10 points padding. 8. I think I would prefer to do asymmetric padding, so we can do a vertical of 8 and an horizontal of 10, which will make the container a bit wider. I can reduce the opacity here to 20 or even 10. That's fine. Then I would like the size to move towards this side, towards the right here. So I can do cross axis alignment to start, and that's fine. So then next thing to do now is to create the bottom content, which contains a button and the price. So let's go ahead to create that now. So that would be below. We have our header, which is this. We have our hero, which is this. Our hero, which is this. Our section contains the description and the color property, and then we need the button. Call it the button. So you can go ahead to create that now. Of course, return a placeholder container to stop the IDE from complaining. The bottom container should be a row of 2 items. So we can go ahead and add that. The first text, which is, it's not a text, it should be a button. Use a flat button. For now, it's not handling anything. And the child would be a text which says add item to bag, I believe. Add a bag. It says add a bag. And a plus sign. Then the next content will be not a button in this case, but price. Nope, should be a text. That should be in $95. Now, the IDE will complain because the dollar symbol is used to concatenate strings in that. So to make it work, I'll add R behind it to, this just tells the IDE to use the value as a raw value as it is. So we can check that. So it's available here. Now we need to push the items apart, so we can add a spacing, which is a main element spacing. Main space between, I'll push the content. Then the padding, because flat button already has a padding in its content already. I'll only add a padding to the right side here. So I will say padding edge insets only the right side, 20 points. But of course you can go ahead to add a padding to the left here. Now the button should be at the bottom here, but in this page it is very close to the content. To do that, we'll need to expand the section so it takes the maximum space as possible and push the other content to the bottom. So we go to the top section where we have section and put this item inside and expand it and our section as a child. So that should give us the effect that we want. Now let's go ahead to format the content, starting from the text here. I have a text font width, bold font width, and maybe the size a bit bigger. Nah, that's too big. We can do 18. It's supposed to be bold. Let's try. Let's check for other font size. Let's try normal. Bold on size 14. Okay. And we can also add the same thing for the price. The price is lighter. The price size should be 28. Okay, that looks more like it. We are close to the end. Now, what we need to do is to make, when a user clicks on the color, it should change the color of the shoe. Now, what will happen is we have different colors of the shoes from the asset I added here. You have the blue shoe, the green shoe, the pink shoe, and the yellow shoe. So switching them will make an effect that we are changing the colors of the shoe. So we can go ahead now to create that. So what we can do first is to use a variable which would be the color of the shoe. So we'll create a list of colors, but in this case to be a string. Color string, because we need to match the values of this color string with the values of the colors here. We can do it that way, or we can easily add the part of the images that we want to use here. You know what? Let me just add the image part. So for the blue shoe, you can go ahead and copy the part and add it here. And for the green shoe, I'll copy the part and add it here. For the pink shoe, I'll copy the part and add it here. Sorry, the yellow. and here the pink. So you just need to make sure that the colors and the color part are in the same index in the array. So let's go ahead to use the colors. But before we even do that, we need to have a state for the selected color. So to do that, we need to create a variable called selected color. The default color should be the blue color, should be the first one. So we go to the property, the color property. Now instead of having just a container as the object, we'll wrap it inside a gesture container, gesture widget. A gesture detector widget. So what it provides you with, it provides you with different callback method that handles user interaction. In our case here, I'll be using the on-tap callback, which will tell us when the item is being clicked on. So we can test that by seeing index with the index clicked. This should be. So I want to print the index of the item that was clicked into the console. So clicking that, index 0 clicked, you can see that right here. Index 1 clicked, index 2 clicked, index 3 clicked. Now that we have that, we can set the selected color to be the color of the index. We can wrap it inside a set state. Set state will allow the widget to rebuild the component, and it checks for which of the component has changed, and then it adds the changes to it. So now that we have the selected color change, when we click on this, we need to have our ticker as a child of the container. The ticker is what would show when one of the colors is selected. So first let's add checker image. Now if I run this project, it will show in all of them, but we don't want that. Then we can pad the container to reduce the size of the image. So I can use a padding and add edge insert to all the size. I can add 10. Okay, that seems like it, but I can reduce it some more to 8. Now I don't want the checker on all the colors right now. I want it on the selected color. Now what I can do, we can either use the color property of the selected color, which is what we use. We use the property of the selected color. So now we would say when selected, if selected color equals to colors dot index, use the ternary operator, we show the ticker. If not, we show a placeholder. So now we have that working. Now when we select the green color, it stays there. When we select the yellow, or the pink, it works fine. Now we need to change the color of the shoe based on the selected color here. So we go to the Euro section, Now that we have the selected color index, so we can use that to get the index of the image part from the color index. Now we can use the index of the selected color to pick the index of the image part. To do that, we'll use the image part list, and then use the color index of the selected color to pick the right index. Now when we select the colors, we should change the image based on the selected color. Now the final thing to do is to make this favorite button interactive. So to do that, we need to add a variable called is favorite. Which is by default false. Now we can use the value of this is favorite to set the image that we want to use in this floating action button, which should be here. Now, if it is favorite, we use the enabled image. And if it is not favorite, we use the disabled image. Now, clicking on this, nothing will happen. We need to modify the value of is favorite when you click on the button, which can be done in the onPressed method. So we'll call set state and change the value is favorite. Now clicking on this would modify the value, and our color picker still works.
So with this, we have come to the end of the video. If you like the content, please hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. I'll be uploading more content like this that focus more on mobile development.